The database entry for humans was 37 slides long and wrong on almost every page. Dara Rin sat in the back row of Comparative Xenobiology 201 and watched Professor Selk load the presentation with the same calm expression she used for everything. Bus delays, cold food, bad news. She had a small notebook open in front of her. She had already written the date at the top. She was ready to take notes. The lecture hall was large and circular, designed to fit students of many different sizes. Ruvan, a Garati with dark green scales and a jaw that could crack bone, took up nearly 2 seats to Dara's left. Niel, a Chirene student whose 4 thin arms moved constantly when she was thinking, sat just ahead. Ozan, a Thuvian like the professor, sat near the front with his notes already organized. Cadet Brix, a large soft-eyed Halvari who smelled faintly of grass, sat quietly near the window. Dara was the only human in the room. Professor Selk pulled up the first slide. It showed a simple image of a human standing upright, arms at its sides, next to a size comparison chart. Selk was old, with 4 arms and a voice like dry paper, and he taught with the kind of slow precision that came from decades of practice. Today we begin the Terran unit, he said. We will focus primarily on the human species, as they're the most recently admitted members of the Galactic Union and the least documented in our current records. He clicked to the next slide. Dara read it. She wrote it down. It said, dietary classification, herbivore. Primary intake, plant matter, grains, fruit. Limited protein processing. Low digestive complexity. Ruvan read it too. He made a sound, not quite a laugh, more like air pushed through teeth, and leaned toward the Chirene student beside him. Herbivores, he said, low but not quite enough. They cross the stars and they eat grass. A few students laughed. Niel did not. She was watching Dara. Dara was writing her notebook. Selk continued through the slides. Threat level, negligible. Physical strength, below galactic average. Sensory range, limited. Endurance, moderate. Social structure, complex but non-aggressive. Each slide was neat. Each slide was confident. Each slide was built on data collected 80 years ago at a diplomatic reception where the human delegation had eaten carefully arranged canapes and small bowls of fruit salad and smiled politely for 3 hours while a survey team took notes. Ruvan read the threat classification aloud when Selk paused to change slides. Negligible, he said again, this time with full volume and a grin that showed too many teeth. The only spacefaring species that could be eaten by its own livestock. The room laughed properly this time. Even Ozan allowed himself a small smile. Selk did not correct anyone. The data said what it said. Dara kept writing. She wrote down every wrong thing. She wrote it neatly, in order, with the slide number next to each point. She was not angry. She was not embarrassed. She had heard worse. She had also eaten breakfast that morning, scrambled eggs, 2 strips of bacon, a glass of orange juice, and she felt fine. When the lecture ended, most students filed out quickly. Ruvan left with a group, still laughing about something. Niel paused near the door and looked back at Dara once before leaving. Dara stayed behind. She walked down to the front of the hall, where Professor Selk was closing his presentation files. Professor, she said, may I ask where the Academy sourced the data for this unit? Selk looked up. He seemed mildly surprised she had stayed, but not unwelcoming. The foundational records were compiled during first contact assessment, he said. The original survey team submitted their report to the Union archives approximately 80 years ago. It has been updated in small ways since, but the core data remains. What kind of assessment was it? A dietary and behavioral observation. Standard first contact protocol. They attended several social events with the human diplomatic team over a period of days. Dara nodded. Were the events catered? Selk paused. I believe so, yes. It was a diplomatic setting. Okay, Dara said. Thank you, Professor. She picked up her bag and walked out into the corridor. The academy hallways were wide and bright, full of students of a dozen different species moving between classes. Nobody paid her much attention. She was small and quiet, and the database said she was negligible. She pulled out her comm device as she walked. She opened her contact list and found the name she wanted. Campus Kitchen, Building seed, she typed a short message. It read, "Hi. I would like to place a request for tomorrow. One ribeye steak, medium rare to go. Thermal container if you have one. Thank you." She sent it. She put the device back in her bag. She had another class in 20 minutes, Galactic history, third floor, and she did not want to be late. The thermal container sat under Dara's desk like a small, quiet secret. It had been there since she arrived early to class, tucked between her bag and the leg of her seat. It was not large, about the size of a lunchbox, matte gray, sealed tight. It did not look like much. The campus kitchen had done exactly what she asked and added a small wooden board and a short knife inside. She had checked before class. Everything was there. She did not open it yet. Professor Selk started the second session of the human unit with a new set of slides. This one was titled Human Dietary Habits and Nutritional Dependency. The first image showed a human hand holding an apple. The second showed a bowl of grain. The third showed a smiling human at a table covered in vegetables and bread. The human digestive system, Selk began, is optimized for plant-based intake. Caloric needs are modest by galactic standards. Protein sourcing, where present, is primarily processed and indirect, meaning humans consume animals that have already been processed through industrial means, at a remove from the actual act of consumption. He said this carefully as a fact because to him it was a fact. Ruvan had his arms crossed. He was reading the slide with the kind of bored confidence that came from already being right about something once. So, they cannot even process meat directly, he said. Not a question, just a statement placed into the room. The data suggests limited raw protein tolerance. Yes, Selk said. Niel was watching Dara again. Dara was writing in her notebook. Selk moved to the next slide, which covered human meal frequency and caloric intake. He noted that humans ate 3 to 5 small meals per day, mostly plant-based, and that their bodies were not built for large or irregular consumption. He said this while standing in front of a graphic that showed a human portion size next to a Garati portion size. The difference made Ruvan smile. "The only spacefaring species," Ruvan said quietly to the student beside him, "that eats like a ground animal." He did not bother keeping his voice down this time. Cadet Brix turned his large soft eyes toward Dara without meaning to, then looked away. Dara reached under her desk. She did not make a show of it. She simply reached down, picked up the thermal container, and placed it on the desk in front of her. The sound of it touching the surface was small and ordinary. Nobody noticed at first. She unclipped the seal. She lifted the lid. The smell came out immediately. It was not a bad smell. It was iron and heat and something deep and animal. The smell of cooked meat, of char at the edges and blood still pooling at the center of a thick cut of beef that had been resting in a sealed container for 20 minutes and was still warm. It moved through the air of the lecture hall the way smells do in enclosed spaces, quietly at first, and then all at once that Ruvan's nostrils flared. Niel went still. Ozan turned around in his seat. Dara picked up the short knife, pressed the tip to the steak, and cut a clean slice from the center. The meat was red inside, not raw but close. Juice ran onto the wooden board. She set the slice on the edge of the board, picked it up with her fingers, and ate it. She chewed slowly. She looked at the front board where Selk's slide was still displayed. Professor Selk had stopped talking. He was standing at the front of the room with his presentation remote in one hand and his notes in the other, and he was looking at Dara with an expression that was not quite confusion and not quite alarm, but somewhere between the two. The lecture hall was completely silent. Dara cut another slice. Nobody moved. Ruvan was staring at the wooden board, at the knife, at the red pooling at the base of the cut. His jaw was slightly open. He was a predator by biology and by classification, and the database said he was threat level high. And right now he was staring at a human eat raw-centered beef with the same look a large dog give a small dog that has just done something it did not expect. Niel's forearms had all gone still for the first time since Dara had known her. Cadet Brix had leaned slightly back in his seat. Dara looked up. She noticed the silence. She noticed all of them looking at her. She looked at Professor Selk. "Sorry," she said. Her voice was calm and ordinary. "Did you want to continue?" Selk opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the slide, still showing behind him. The smiling human, the vegetables, the modest grain bowl, looked back at Dara, looked at the steak. He said nothing for a moment that lasted slightly too long. Then Ravon, who had not looked away from the wooden board, said in a voice that was much quieter than any voice he had used in this class before, "What is that?" Dara looked at him. "Lunch," she said. She cut another slice. Selk did not dismiss the class, so much as simply stop lecturing. That he stood at the front of the room, looked at his slide, looked at Dara, and then quietly set down his presentation remote in the way a person sets something down when they have decided, without announcing it, that they are done with it for now. Students who had been gathering their bags paused. Some sat back down. Ravon had not moved at all. Dara finished her slice, cut another, and ate it with the same steady calm she had used for the previous two. She was not performing anything. She was just eating lunch. The steak was good. The kitchen had done it properly, seared hard on the outside, soft and red in the middle, rested long enough that it held together cleanly when she cut it. Ravon spoke first. His voice had lost its earlier edge. "What animal is that?" "Cow," Dara said. "Bush tortoise. We domesticated them a long time ago." "Domesticated," Ozan repeated from the front row. He had turned fully in his seat. "You keep them." "We raise them," Dara said. "Billions of them. There are more cows on Earth than there are Thuvians in the entire Union Registry, last I checked." Ozan pulled out his data tablet and opened a search. He typed in the word cow. He found the entry. He read the size and mass of an adult bovine. He read the entry for a cattle operation, the number of animals per facility, the weight yield per animal, the global annual processing figures. He put his tablet face down on the desk. Niel leaned forward from her seat. Her forearms were moving again, which meant she was thinking. "Do humans hunt?" she asked. "Some do," Doris said. "For sport, mostly, or for local food in places without farming access. But most humans just buy their meat." "Buy it from where?" "Processing facilities. Industrial slaughterhouses. A single large facility can process several thousand animals in a day." Cadet Brix, the large soft-eyed Halvari who had been sitting very quietly near the window, made a small sound. It was not a word. It was the sound a large, soft-eyed herbivore makes when it has heard something it wishes it had not. Niel looked at him, then back at Dara. "And you eat this regularly?" "Most humans eat meat daily," Dara said. "It has been part of the human diet for about 300,000 years. Before we had farms, we hunted. Before we hunted with tools, we hunted with our hands and our feet." Ravon said, "Your hands." "And persistence," Dara said. "We are very good at not stopping." Professor Selk had walked slowly down from the front of the room. He was standing at the end of Dara's row now, looking at the wooden board, the knife, the steak. He had the expression of someone whose professional life had just shifted slightly to the left without warning. "Miss Wren," he said carefully, "is this a cultural practice specific to your region of origin? Perhaps a traditional diet from a particular human community?" Dara shook her head. "It is standard. Beef is one of the most commonly consumed foods on Earth. It is sold in small shops, large markets, restaurants, airports. Children eat it. The elderly eat it. It is not a specialty. It is just food." Selk was quiet. "Professor," Dara said. She was not unkind. The survey data was collected at a diplomatic reception. The food at those events was catered. No one served steak at a first contact greeting. The team watched us eat for 3 hours and saw fruit and bread and salad, because that is what was on the table. Selk looked at his own reflection in the surface of Dara's data screen. "The classification has been in the academic record for 80 years, he said. "I know," Dara said. "It has been taught to thousands of students across dozens of member worlds." "I know that too." A silence settled over the room. Not the shocked silence of earlier, when the smell of a steak had first crossed the room. This was a different kind of silence, the kind that comes after understanding arrives and before anyone decides what to do with it. Niel raised her hand. It was a habit she had picked up from watching human students. "What else is in the database that is wrong?" Dara looked at her. She thought about it for a moment. Not because she did not know the answer, but because there were many answers and she was deciding where to start. "Would you like the short list or the long one?" she asked. Niel looked at the steak, looked at the knife, looked at Ravon, who was still sitting in his seat with his arms no longer crossed, his large scaled hands resting on the desk in front of him, his earlier confidence somewhere on the floor. "Start with the short one," Niel said. Dara nodded. She cut one more slice, ate it, and began to talk. Self postponed his original lesson without making a formal announcement about it. He simply did not pull up a new slide. He sat at the edge of the teaching table at the front of the room, folded two of his four arms across his chest, and said, "Miss Wren, I would like to give you the floor." Nobody objected. Dara came to the front with her notebook. She asked Selk if she could use the main display screen. He gestured for her to go ahead. She pulled up the database entry on the screen, the same slides that had been shown 2 sessions ago, and she stood in front of them the way someone stands in front of a wall they are about to take apart brick by brick. She started with the dietary classification. "Humans are omnivores," she said. "That means we can eat almost anything. Plants, meat, fungi, insects, eggs, fish, roots, bark in some contexts, fermented and decayed matter in small amounts, and several things that are technically toxic in high doses, but that we eat anyway in low doses and enjoy." She paused. "Coffee, alcohol, certain mushrooms. We have been eating these things for so long that our bodies adapted." Ozan raised his hand. "Adapted to poison, adapted to manage it," Doris said. "Human stomach acid is strong enough to kill bacteria that would hospitalize most species. The pH is roughly equivalent to battery acid." Ravon, who had looked up what pH meant on his tablet, went very still. Dara moved to the next wrong entry. "Physical strength, below galactic average. This one is partly true," she said fairly. "Compared to Garati or Halvari, a human is not strong in raw force. But human muscle composition is unusual. We have a high ratio of slow-twitch endurance muscle. We can carry heavy loads for a long time without stopping. A human soldier in full gear can walk 30 kilometers in a day, every day for weeks." She clicked past the entry and brought up a blank space on the screen. She wrote a single word, "persistence." "Early humans," she said, "could not outrun most prey animals. So we developed a different method. We would find an animal, a large one, fast, built for short bursts of speed, and we would simply follow it. Not sprint. Walk. Yup. Stay behind it. Keep it moving. Keep it scared. The animal would run in bursts and then stop to rest. Humans do not need to stop and rest the same way. We sweat to cool ourselves. Most animals cannot do that efficiently. So we would follow one animal for hours, sometimes half a day, in heat over open ground, until the animal could not run anymore." She paused. "Then we would walk up to it and kill it." Silence. "We called it persistence hunting," she said. "Some human groups still do it." Cadet Brix had put both his large, soft hands on the desk in front of him. He was breathing slowly and deliberately. He had not said anything in a long time. Niel asked about teeth. Dara pointed her own mouth and explained. "Front teeth for biting and cutting. Back teeth for grinding. The small pointed ones in the middle, canines, were not for decoration. They were older than civilization. They were from the part of human history before farms, before fire, before tools, when the species was simply another predator on an open plain full of things trying to eat each other. Most species," she said, "have teeth built for one kind of eating. Humans have both sets. The database classified us as herbivores partly because the survey team saw our front teeth and missed the canines, or assumed they were vestigial. They are not vestigial." Ozan said, "You still use them?" Dara picked up the last piece of steak from the wooden board on her desk, leaned forward slightly, and bit into it cleanly. She held up the piece to show where the canine had gone in. Ozan looked at his tablet again. "Did not write anything this time." Niel raised her hand. "The knife," she said. "The one you used earlier. Is that a standard human tool?" "That was a small knife," Dara said. "I brought a larger one today. I was not planning to use it in class. I just had it on me." She reached in her bag and set a chef's knife on the desk beside the wooden board. It was about 30 centimeters long, wide at the base, narrowing to a clean point. Well used. The handle was worn smooth. "This is standard kitchen equipment," she said. "Most humans own several. The ability to butcher an animal, To break it down from whole carcass into usable cuts is considered a basic life skill in many cultures. It is taught to children. Salk looked at the knife for a long moment. There are human sporting events, Dara added, where competitors are judged on how quickly and cleanly they can butcher an animal carcass. It is a timed competition. People watch it for fun. Nobody said anything. Niel quietly opened a new document on her tablet. She began typing. Dara looked around the room, at Ruvan, who was no longer making eye contact with her, at Cadet Bricks, who appeared to be doing breathing exercises, at Ozen, who was staring at the chef's knife with the expression of someone revising a long-held opinion, and she put the knife back in her bag. "Any other questions?" she asked. The room was very quiet. "Good," Dara said. "I think there's a lot to cover." The common area on the east side of campus was open until late, and on most evenings it was loud with the sound of students from a dozen worlds trying to relax in the same space. That evening it was quieter than usual, or maybe it just felt that way. Dara sat at a small round table near the window with the last of the steak she had packed that morning. Cold now, straight from the container, eaten with her fingers. The sun through the academy windows was the pale yellow of a star that was not quite the same as Earth's sun, and the light made everything look slightly muted, like a memory. Niel found her first. She sat down across from Dara and set her tablet on the table. She had been typing into the new document she opened in class. She did not ask if Dara minded the company. Among Chirene, sitting beside someone was already the question, and staying was the answer. "I've been building a supplementary file," Niel said, "for the human unit. I am pulling from Union archives where better records exist, and from public human databases where they do not." Dara looked at the screen. Niel had covered 3 dense pages in the time since class had ended. "You work fast," Dara said. "There's a lot to fix," Niel said simply. They sat in comfortable quiet for a moment. Then footsteps, heavy ones, the specific weight of Garati feet on stone, and Ruvan arrived at the table. He looked at Niel, looked at Dara, looked at the container of cold steak. He pulled out a chair and sat down without being invited. Dara did not comment on this. "I have been reading," Ruvan said. "About what?" Dara asked. "Humans." He put his large hands on the table. His scales were darker near the joints, almost black. "The human database in the Union archives has many entries. I started reading after class, and I have not been able to stop." Niel looked up from her tablet. Ruvan's voice was measured. "Careful, like a person handling something heavy. The entry for human conflicts," he said. "Wars. The database classifies them as resolved territorial disputes. Routine resource competition. Non-escalatory by nature." He paused. "I read the actual summaries of 3 of them." Dara ate a piece of cold steak. Said nothing. "One of them lasted 4 years," Ruvan said. "Covered 6 continents. Involved most of the nations on your planet simultaneously. The casualty figure listed in the summary is," he stopped. Rechecked his own reading on his tablet. 70 to 85 million. "World War II, Dara said. "That number," Ruvan said slowly, "is larger than the total population of several Union member worlds." Dara nodded. "And the database calls it a territorial dispute." "The database calls it a lot of things it isn't," Dara said. She was not cold when she said it. She was just honest. Ruvan looked out the window. His jaw moved slightly, the way it did when he was thinking. "I laughed," he said. "In class. The first day." "Yes," Dara said. "I was confident," he said. "You had data," Dara said. "Bad data, but data is an easy mistake." He looked at her then. "Does it bother you that the whole Union has the wrong information? That every academy, every diplomat, every officer has been trained on it for 80 years. Dara thought about this honestly. She ate the last piece of steak. She put the lid back on the container. "Sometimes," she said. "Mostly no. It has been useful." Niel looked up. "Useful how?" "When everyone thinks you are small and harmless," Dara said, "they do not watch you as carefully. I got through orientation week without anyone challenging me. I got a good dormitory room because the housing committee thought I would be the least disruptive option. 3 of my professors give me easier assignment extensions because they assume human students need more time." She paused. "We do not need more time. I just use it." Vaughn stared at her. You let them underestimate you, he said. I do not correct them unless it matters, Dara said. Today it mattered. The wrong data was being taught as fact to students who will one day work alongside humans in shared space. That is worth fixing. Someone calling me small and harmless at a housing meeting, she shrugged. That is just convenient. Niall made a note in her document. She did not say what the note was. Vaughn leaned back. The first contact team, he said. They went to Earth. They sat with humans at a formal event. They watched you eat politely for 3 hours. They went home and wrote a report. Yes, Doris said, and they genuinely believed it. They saw what was in front of them, Doris said. We were on our best behavior. We always are the first time. Vaughn was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, he asked, what were they expecting to find? Dara looked at him. A small smile crossed her face. Not sharp, not proud. Just warm. Something small, she said. Something gentle. Something that would be happy to just get a seat at the table. She stood up and collected her container. They were not entirely wrong, she said. We did want the seat. She tucked the container into her bag. Vaughn looked at the table where the wooden board and the knife had been that afternoon. His reflection showed faintly in the window beside him, but he did not laugh. The week after the steak, things changed in small ways that added up. Vaughn stopped sitting near the back and moved to the middle row, closer to Niall, who was still building her supplementary file on human biology with the focused energy of someone who had found a project they could not put down. Ozan still sat near the front, still organized, still slightly skeptical, but he no longer smiled when the database was wrong. Now he frowned, which was progress. Cadet Bricks had submitted a dormitory transfer request. He told his resident advisor it was for logistical reasons. He did not specify what the logistics were. When the next session of Comparative Xenobiology 201 began, Professor Selk did not open with a new unit. He stood at the front of the room, all 4 hands clasped together, and said, "Before we continue, I have an announcement regarding the human biology module." The room was quiet. I have submitted a formal request to the Galactic Union Academic Records Committee for a full review and revision of the Terran Human Database as it appears in current Academy curriculum. He said it plainly, without drama. I have also submitted a supplementary note to the record citing a significant error in the original first contact survey methodology. He pulled up the main screen. On it was a draft of the proposed new classification. He read it aloud, slowly, so everyone could follow. Terran human. Biological classification. Apex omnivore. Predatory ancestry confirmed. Digestive range. Extraordinary. Recorded tolerance for chemical, bacterial, and environmental stressors. High. Endurance metrics. Exceptional by galactic standard. Strength classification. Moderate in direct output. High in sustained application. Threat assessment. Pending full review. First contact behavioral profile. Deliberately non-threatening. Note: initial survey data considered unreliable due to controlled observation environment. Comprehensive reassessment recommended. He clicked off the screen. This draft was prepared in part, he said, using corrective material compiled by a student of this class. He looked at Niall, who looked at her tablet and pretended to be reading something. Then Selk looked at Dara. Miss Wren, he said, I owe you a formal apology on behalf of this institution. The material taught in this class was incorrect. You were present to hear it taught about your own species, and you responded with more patience than was required of you. Dara looked at him steadily. You did not know, she said. That is what the class is for. Selk was quiet for a moment. Something moved across his old, careful face. Then he said, I've been teaching xenobiology for 41 years. This is the first time a student has corrected the curriculum with their lunch. Someone laughed. It was small at first, and then it spread across the room, warm and genuine, the kind of laughter that is not aimed at anyone, the kind that comes from shared understanding arriving at the same moment in everyone at once. Even Ozan laughed. Just briefly. He looked slightly annoyed at himself for it. Vaughn laughed properly, deep and open, nothing guarded in it. And for a moment, he looked less like the student who had crossed his arms and said herbivore like a verdict, and more like someone who had learned something and found the learning good despite how it had arrived. After class, the room emptied slowly. Da HFY. She checked that her thermal container was empty and clean. She slid her notebook into the outer pocket. Normal things. Niall waited near the door. What are you having for lunch? She asked. Dara thought about it. She had been to the kitchen early that morning. She had stood in line behind two Garati students and one very tall Thuvian and ordered from the daily menu and taken her food back to the dormitory and eaten it at her desk before class. Salad, she said. Niall stared at her. Greens, some grain, vinegar dressing. One of the kitchen staff told me about a sauce they make from fermented plant extract, and I tried it. It was good. Niall looked at her for a long moment with the expression of someone trying to determine if they were being tested. You eat salad, Niall said. I eat everything, Dara said. That is the whole point. She smiled, not the small, careful smile of someone managing a room, but the full, easy smile of someone who is nowhere to be for another 2 hours and plans to enjoy the sun on the way back to the dormitory. She walked out through the wide, bright doors of the lecture hall. Outside, the campus was busy with the midday movement of students, large and small, scaled and soft, some walking, some floating, some moving in ways that had no human word attached to them. Dara moved through them without difficulty. She was small and quiet, and the old database had said she was negligible. The new one was still being written. She was not in a hurry. Humans rarely were, when they were going somewhere on purpose. She walked out into the pale yellow sunlight. Just a young woman with a bag on her shoulder and a salad of her recent past, and 41 more years of wrong data waiting somewhere in the Union archives to be corrected, one lunch at a time.